Today I'd like to start developing a prefab system for my game engine. So you can see right here that we have a back entity as an example, and here you can see a lot of components attached to that back. And these components are tweaked in a way that match the back perfectly. So you can see right here, for example, the size of the box collider is set to 0.4 perfectly to fit the back. And the thing is, we can save this entity, the single entity, inside of the scene, like that, using the save scene. However, we're not able to create an asset of the bag, so like a blueprint that tells anyone how to create such a bag. And that is basically what a prefab is. A prefab is a kind of asset that just stores a collection of components. And I'd like to add this prefab system to my game engine because it's very useful for a lot of cases. Like, imagine, for example, you're building a weapon that shoots bullets out. You should be able to spawn bullet entities, and these bullet entities might have a lot of components already pre-attached, like a bullet script that moves the bullet, or the transform scale set a little bit smaller. And that's what we have prefabs for. Like, they are blueprints that tell anyone how to construct that entity. So yeah, let's go over to our game engine and start working on the actual prefab system, or the prefab asset. So since it's an asset, we have to create a new asset type called prefab. And right here we'll create a prefab header file, the skeleton for that alongside, and we'll inherit from the asset class publicly, and next to that we'll also define its pure virtual methods, like that, where we'll override them and return the asset type we've just created. And next to that, we also have to define a static version of this, since I'm using that for serialization purposes. So we'll say get class asset type, and that's pretty much it. Now, since we're already able to store scenes, as you can see here, for example, and these scenes are able to display entities, right? Representing a prefab won't be that different from that. Like, we'll also only have to have some kind of serializer that contains all of that data. So let's go ahead and just use a JSON serializer, which is basically the backend and contains all of the data. So the JSON serializer will only be this side, this part, and then whenever we are trying to create a prefab from this asset prefab, or an entity from this asset prefab, we'll just use this backend and try to deserialize it and create an entity based on that. So yeah, let's create a default constructor. Let's default construct it and also create a default constructor manually, since we'll also create a constructor where we're taking an entity by its runtime ID, and also the scene it lives in. And all we're doing in there is let's create the source file. Basically, we're constructing an entity asset, a prefab asset based on an already existing entity. So we'll copy over all of its data. So what we'll do is pretty simple. We'll create a serialization scene entity serialization manager. Let's call it the serialization manager. And what we'll do is we'll take the serialization manager and serialize the entity data from the scene passed in of this entity to the backend, like that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Now we've done that, so we can go over and create the importer for the prefab. So a prefab importer is simply a kind of class that handles all of the importing of a prefab once the engine starts up. And a prefab is very similar in terms of its internals to a material. So we'll just copy over all of that and now define all of these methods inside of the source file. So let's go to the material source or material importer and copy all of that over as well. And now let's do a little bit of Vim magic once again, like that, perfect. And yeah, let's just do like this. Okay, nice. And now we'll do that. Okay, so now that we've done that, we just have to change over a few things. So the extension shouldn't be a material but rather prefab. We'll get that as a type and return the prefab as a type. We'll load the file, and does that make sense? Well, we're getting it backend from that source file, loading it. We're getting the serializer, we're allocating the hollow asset. We don't have to do all of that. Like, this is the backend we're trying to set on the prefab, so all we'll do is we'll scope cast that into a prefab asset, and then on the prefab we'll set that backend to this backend, and that's it. Okay, now that we've done that, let's now register that prefab importer in the registry. And now let's also create the serializer. The prefab serializer header file, let's create the skeleton. Let's go to the mesh serializer and just copy all of that over. And okay, the prefab serializer.cpp file will look like this, but instead of mesh we'll have prefab, and the header file will look like this, but the same applies in here. Okay, so what we'll do in here is very simple. It's all we'll do is well, when we're serializing, what we're trying to do is to set the backend pass in here is all of the data we already need in the prefab. So if we're serializing, what we have to do is we have to write to that backend that was passed in. So let's call prefab.backend.write_to from this into this backend that's trying to be serialized. And in here we'll just do the inverse, where we're getting the backend and writing to the prefab's backend. And that's pretty much it already. Okay, and now we've got the serializer done, so we can go over to asset serializer and import it and register it properly. And we'll do that by providing the type and the prefab serializer. And now we should compile and everything should work fine. So I'll see you once that's done compiling. Okay, nice. This seemed to compile fine and everything seems to be working. So now we can actually go ahead and start working on creating prefabs and stuff like that. So the first thing we should be able to do is drag materials from here into there. We're already able to drag materials since that's necessary for like mesh renderers, for example. You need to drag a mesh into the renderer, but we should be able to drag a prefab into here, and then there should be an instance of that entity of that prefab, and in the same way we should be able to drag an entity into the asset panel into a specific folder, and that should result in the creation of a prefab asset. So let's start working on that. So the first thing we'll need is in the hierarchy panel, we'll need to start there by like creating a drag and drop source from the entities. So I'll have to check and see where the entities selectable is. It is right here, and right there the actual button, so to say, of the entity is created. So we can start our drag and drop source in there. Drag and drop source, begin drag drop source, like that. And we'll have to also end it in the same if statement, like that. And the drag and drop source should just contain a payload with the entity's runtime ID. So what we'll do is we'll say, okay, let's set the drag and drop payload like that. Let's call it Origo read entity read for entity runtime ID, or let's just call it entity ID. And the data will just be the well, what will it be? The current entity, the entity ID to a string, .toString, like that. And let's just use a C string since that's convertible into a void pointer. And for the size, well, each character is a byte, and we need the null terminator at the end as well, so it'll just be that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. What we'll also have to do is set the text up here unformatted, because well, we want the name of the current entity in there to be displayed of the thing we're dragging around, and everything should be compiling fine, and we can test it already and also get to the place where we have to handle the drop target, so the hierarchy list being a target for dropping stuff. So yeah, you can see right here, this works perfectly fine. We can drag stuff, and you can see the name is right here. Now next thing we'll need is this handling of the drag and drop target. So we'll do that right here, or we won't be finding it here, but we'll just call it handle drop target. Let's call it like that. Handle prefab drop target. And let's go over to the hierarchy panel header file and create a private method for that. Call it like that. Okay, and now let's define it. It's on the hierarchy panel. And well, what will we do in there? Well, okay, we'll begin a drag and drop target, right? So what we do is we say, okay, let's begin a drag and drop target. If that failed, we'll just return. And now what we'll do is we'll accept a payload with the actual asset ID. And we have this Origo asset UUID right here, yeah, where when you're starting to drag an asset, it contains this stuff. So what we can do is say, okay, IMGUI will begin the payload something. Begin payload, how was it called? Begin or accept something. Accept drag drop payload, exactly. And it's Origo asset UID. Right? Origo asset UID, yeah. Okay. And we'll accept that, and well, we'll set a IMGUI payload pointer to that, like so. And if there is none, then the user has dragged something else, and so we'll have to return and end it like that. So what am I doing? End drag drop target, and we'll return. Otherwise we'll be able to extract a string from there. So let's create a const char pointer from the payload data. So that's a UID string, and let's get the payload dot data, and let's cast that into this const char pointer since it's a void pointer now. And let's create a UUID from that by saying UUID from string. There should be a method for that. Okay, let's do we need to say Origo? Yeah. UID string like that, and now we are able to get the handle to the asset from the asset manager. That's a singleton, and we can get the handle like that, and this returns an optional handle, so we'll have to say there is a possibility that we somehow provide the wrong or drag and drop a invalid UID. So if there is no handle, then we should just do the same like we're doing here. Otherwise, we should try to get the actual prefab by saying, well, we get the asset manager and the instance once again, and get the asset of the prefab by saying that we'll put in the handle like so. And why does that not work? Are we including prefab anywhere? Oh no. Prefab, is that a problem? No, didn't seem to be. Use of undeclared identifier. Why is that not working? Get instance. Wait, there's some kind of problem here. Did you? Use of undeclared identifier. That's weird. Ah, okay, yeah, it was Origo prefab. Like that, and now there's no matching member. Get assets. Why is there no matching member? It should be because of this, but this should be working. Yeah, it is. Super weird. I don't understand why it's not working. Is this also a compiler error? I don't know. Let's just try it out. Weird stuff. Okay. I don't understand why this isn't working, because the only problem could be this, but we are defining that on the prefab, right? So I don't seem to understand like what's the problem. We have a default constructor, we have all of that. I really don't know. So it's because we're using the handle, and that's an optional handle. Okay. Damn. Okay. Nice. Okay, now we have the prefab. But this also isn't ensured that it's a prefab. So because like I don't know, we could be dragging like a material or something into there. So if it's not a prefab, we will have to do that again. But when all of these cases pass, we can be sure we have a prefab, so we can finally create an actual asset. So let's go to the asset manager, or no, to the actual active scene, and create an entity of name. Let's just call it prefab instance. Like that, and let's just get the entity ID, and what we'll do is we'll say we'll just create a serialization manager, scene entity serialization manager, like that, And we'll call serialization manager dot right, will we do deserialized entity data, I believe. Is it data? No, it's deserialized entity. Yeah, like that, deserialized entity, and all we'll pass in there is the and context.activeScene. Let's do that. Then we'll have to pass in the entity. So, oh no, we'll have to pass in the backend. So we'll use the prefab.backend. And oh damn, deserialized entity doesn't seem to work. We should use something else. Deserialized entity components, yeah. Yeah, we'll have to call that deserialized entity components. Yeah, that's the correct approach. Right. That's the only thing that really works. Like that, yeah. And yeah, next to the backend we'll have to pass in the entity ID. And that's pretty much it for the hierarchy panel stuff. So can already go ahead and compile this and move over to the asset panel now, because we're pretty much done when it comes to like the hierarchy panel. Now all that's left to do is like we have to account the asset panel. Like we have to be able to drag in stuff there such that it accepts this what we've created up there, like the how's it called, where was it, Origo entity ID right there. It has to accept that payload and do stuff with it. So let's go to the asset panel tree right there, and what we'll have to do is when we're iterating over each folder right here, this is the place where we're iterating over every folder, and we'll have to call something like handle entity drop target. Like here we have to draw it. So let's just go to the asset panel and define it on there. Like, yeah, like that. Handle how do I call it? Handle entity drop target, and it has to take in the folder entry. So let's provide the current child address of that, and yeah, let's also define it now. So let's create the asset panel tree, or just the asset panel, and now we'll have to define what we're doing here. So we'll have to accept a IMGUI drop target, IMGUI well, it's begin some kind of drop target, begin drop, drag drop target, yeah. If that fails, we'll return. Otherwise, we're able to like start creating the actual entity if, or the prefab if the entity RID has been provided. So we'll have to accept that payload once again. So we'll go over and say, okay, we'll create the const IMGUI payload pointer, call it payload, and in there we'll begin the drag and drop, or we'll accept it rather, right? So we'll accept the drag and drop payload, Origo entity ID, yeah. And if there's no payload, we'll return, and we'll also end the drag and drop target. Okay, it finally finished compiling. Wait, what have we developed a second ago? Yeah, we're able to drag stuff. We should be able to drop stuff, right? Oh, but we're having some kind of failure. I'll check that out right away. So in there, we begin a drag and drop target, and we end the drag and drop target. Ah, yeah, we have to also end it right here. So that should be the problem, I hope. Yeah, okay, back to this. What we'll have to do is we'll have to end the drag and drop target right here. Okay, so now we try that. Still fails. Because it has some kind of problem with the begin drag and drop source. Are we beginning a drag and drop source anywhere? Okay, so because, well, I believe it's because of this. Okay, so it should be now we should be able to do this. I don't know why it doesn't work. I feel like it's because of the thing we're developing right now, because it's undone. Yeah, okay. So if we were to drag, okay, we are able to drag stuff around here, and if we release that, nothing happens. Yeah, because we're still developing that, but we should be able to drag stuff into here, but we're not. So something's definitely wrong. Well, we're beginning the drag and drop target. Are we calling this? Yeah, we are. Right here, yeah. So, it's because we're doing it like this. We have to do a custom one. Begin drag and drop target custom, and we have to adjust that to the current Windows rect. Get current window dot get rect. Is that the method call? Get or rect, just rect, yeah, like that, and it expects to, what was the second argument again? Yeah, an ID. Okay, I get ID, and let's just say that we want this to be called hierarchy prefab drop. Okay, that should now work. And now back to this, we have the payload, and now we should get the string, so we'll do the read string. Okay, now we can test that, and yeah, it works, nice. Okay, now back to this, we should get the read string by casting this to a const char pointer. How do you call it? Yeah, const char pointer, and get the payload data. Now we'll do the read stuff by calling read from string and providing the read string like that. And now we have the runtime ID. Now what we have to do, okay, we've got the read, and what are we trying to do in this method? We're trying to create a prefab asset, right? So what we'll have to do is we'll have to allocate a prefab in the creation service of my asset manager. So we have this asset creation service, and in there we'll have to create a new method called create prefab, and let's go ahead and define that. Create prefab, it should be called. Let's just copy over all of the stuff from the material. However, let's just replace a few things. So we'll ensure that there's a physical folder for the folder we're passing in. the unique path is being created with prefab instead of material, and let's say .prefab. The material handle is that. So let's just call that prefab handle, and let's just call that prefab, and let's not set the shader or resolve anything, and let's replace that with prefab and do the same for this and also import it. Okay. Now we have the serializer. Or do we really need the serializer? No, we don't. We just have to. We don't have to do all of that. It's kind of overkill. Well, this would already work, but we just need to get the prefab.backend.write to backend, and that should already work. And then we just save that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So we'll go to the creation service and create a prefab from our current folder, which is that entry, and this returns true or false. So if that worked, we'll just set tree dirty to true, such that we'll re-render our entire tree. And yeah, is that it? Should be it, right? We're creating the prefab. Yeah, let's try it out. This might already work, but I'm not sure right now. Wait, no, it shouldn't. Should it? No, it shouldn't. No, it shouldn't. It should definitely not work, because we're just creating an empty prefab. What we've been trying to do is we've created this constructor overload in the prefab file where we can pass in an entity and a scene, right? So we should also use that right here by providing that. That is the entity we're trying to copy from, and the scene. Let's import that, or not import, but adjust the namespaces. Oh no, not in there. It's rather in there. We'll just adjust the parameter list and also make sure that we are using that to create the prefab, because this function just takes in a parameter pack right here, and we can just provide that when we're constructing that prefab. So now that we've done that, what we can do is we can provide the runtime ID and the context active scene, and now it should work. I'm pretty sure that with this done, we should have our prefab system ready. I hope it works, because it's like 2 AM here in Germany and like I'm pretty tired, man. Okay, wait. So we have a cube, as you can see right here. Now what we should be able to do is we should be able to drag that into the resources. And with that, we've created a prefab. And if we take a look at prefab, yeah, you can see right here all of the data of the cube is serialized into there. And now if I drag that into here, yay, okay, perfect. It does serialize the stuff on there. Very nice. Well, there are a few problems, like for example, you can see right here that this doesn't outline, since it doesn't have the outline component attached to it. So there are a lot of details that I'll have to fix up. But yeah, I just wanted to show you how easy it is to create like a basic prefab system that's already working, and maybe this gave you some idea of how to design your prefab system if you're trying to develop one. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like and subscribe if you did, and yeah, see you soon. Bye bye.